I get around so many people that say, I've got to make as much money as I possibly can because it's about to end. That is such an ignorant statement. Whoever can control the manufacturing and can control renewable energy will be the world economic superpower for the next couple of 100 years. This is the greatest wealth creation opportunity of our lifetime.
This is the Solar Disruption Theory.
All right, season 6 of the Solar Disruption Theory podcast. My name is Chad Towner. I'm hosting, and today for episode 1, we had to bring back the CEO of Freedom Forever. His name is Brett Bouchy. There's a lot that has happened in 2024. We'll get right into it. Brett, thanks for joining. How you been?
Been good. It's nice to be back on this couch. I haven't done this in a while. I've just realized that as I sat back here in the studio, it might have been like a year since I've done my last podcast.
You've been hard to track down, and the last time we did a podcast with you, I always made a joke about how you have like this tan line on your arm from pickleball, but it's gone now, and I think it's because you've found a new hobby, which is called domestic content. So you're not playing as much pickleball anymore. We'll get into that hobby, but 2024 has been a pretty eventful year for solar. Anything you want to I guess catch everybody up on, or give us maybe the state of solar right now as you see it for 2024 so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's the best way to describe it. It's been a year of just absolute turbulence. And it started in 22 with interest rates, the velocity of interest rates increasing, and then that dovetailed into so many bankruptcies, which have wreaked havoc with all of the residential solar finance companies. And then in 2024, it's been about the finance companies reacting to the turbulence of 22 and 23 by constricting capital and making it harder to get capital in installers' hands, and also making it harder to get capital into sales reps and sales dealers' hands. And it's been a challenging year for our industry, and a lot of those things have happened. And even though we grew slightly in 22 and 23, we are going to see a significant contraction in the residential solar market. Most people believe 2024 will be down by 25%, which is staggering. When you look back at the history of residential solar, it's grown at over a 20% clip. So I've just never seen an industry that's consistently grown for 15 years and then dip by 25% in any one year. But that's what we're going through right now.
Yeah, it seems like people thought that 2023 was kind of the year of turbulence, and it seems like the finance companies restricting cash put all the pressure on these installers, and it forced a lot of solar companies to go out of business. But those failures, it's like this spiral, because those failures have caused the finance companies to now tighten up even more on risk, and it's caused even more strain for the companies that are still in business. So how has Freedom, because Freedom's not going to shrink in 2024, right? What's Freedom's outlook look like for 24?
Yeah, we're blessed and lucky that we're going to have significant growth. But even our growth, like we are going to be growing at 30 to 40% this year. Historically, that's our worst year. Yeah. Like we have grown historically by 85% over the last 10 years. That's one of the reasons we've been in the Inc. 5000 for 7 consecutive years. So it feels like even at Freedom, it feels like, man, we failed because we're going to grow by 35 or 40%. And that's an incredible. We'll look back as this year as probably the most incredible transformative year for Freedom, because there is no doubt with the contraction that we're seeing significant consolidation. And even though this might be our slowest year of growth, we are going to take more market share in U.S. residential solar this year than we've ever done in any one year. So if you're growing at 80% in a market that's growing by 30%, you're still taking market share. But if you can grow at 40% in a market that's contracting by 25%, you just gobble up, market share. And I just think with the platform that we have, the foundation that we have, that 2025 will be the year of consolidation. Like this industry is going to consolidate. When you look at the top 15 installers from 2022, there's only 8 of them left. And we just continue to get bigger, and most of the other 7 are contracting. I think all of the other 7 are contracting outside of Freedom.
Yeah, and the word consolidation is interesting because, it's like getting all of these small to medium-sized companies to transition and make a change to their business model or abandon their business and then come into Freedom. And so it's like Freedom is growing as the rest of the industry is doing this. And so we've done a few of these kind of creative acquisitions. I don't know what you would want to call them, with a handful of companies already. And it's starting to kind of become this blueprint for that consolidation. So what can you speak to, or what can you share with our audience about a lot of these other smaller companies or even medium-sized companies? Some are decent, pretty big actually, kind of winding down their installation operations part of the business, coming and joining Freedom as sales-only teams.
Yeah, I mean, we've come up with this model where we purchase the assets of the company, and there's so many like sales companies that got into the installation business over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think they're recognizing that a lot of times they did that was they thought in their mind that would increase the valuation of the company. Because remember back in 2022, we had ADT purchase SunPro. We had SunPower purchase Blue Raven for $165 million. These acquisitions were crazy with installation companies. But like, I'm going to criticize the valuation of even Freedom. Like, construction companies inherently just have a bunch of liabilities.
Yeah.
All right. So when we're acquiring a company that has 13,000 installs, we're acquiring a massive liability. And the only intelligent way to do that, because we can't do due diligence on all 13,000 installs, because we have no idea the quality of the install, is that we're purchasing companies where we're just going out and purchasing the assets, but not purchasing the liabilities. And those companies are able, and we're able to take over their pipeline because, I stopped apologizing this for a while ago. It is really difficult to compete with Freedom. We've gotten so big. We have literally, because of our mission-oriented business, because we're willing to operate at a very, very low margin, because we don't use distribution, we're able to operate at 30 to 40 cents lower than our competition. And that's even becoming greater because of domestic content, which we're going to talk a little bit more about. And I knew domestic content would be a massive advantage for Freedom over our competition, but I'm a little surprised of how big of an advantage it is going to become. And you're going to be hearing a lot of noise about this in the Q4 and Q1, and it will dominate 2025.
All right. So, and we're going to transition into domestic content in just a second, but with these acquisitions or transitions from these other companies, you found a way for them to be able to gracefully wind down their existing pipeline, get those projects installed, right? They're not abandoning those customers. They're not just firing all of their employees, and allow them to still take care of their customers, their existing pipeline, but retransition their focus back into focusing just on sales and allowing Freedom to do what we do best, which is installations. How did you do that?
Number one is we hire their employees. So the employees make a transition over to Freedom. The other thing is we become the subcontractor on their pipeline. The reality is we can install that pipeline a lot cheaper than they can.
Yep.
And so we just try to break even on the transition. That enables them capital to get out of any issues that they have or put money in the owner's pockets. But most importantly, they get to focus on sales again. And they became an installation company, and one, for example, was operating in 3 states. And they were so focused on one region of one state, another region of another state, and another region of a third state. You come into the Freedom Network, you have 35 states. You're going to have a consistent operation in all those 35 states. And the first one that we did several months ago, they've literally doubled their volume at Freedom, and they're already operating in 6 to 7 states. My guess is each one of these organizations will come in and do 5 times the volume that they did in their previous operation. The other thing is they can spend 100% of their time and focus on sales.
Yeah.
That is the valuable. Like, I'm criticizing the value of freedom. Sales companies are so valuable. Installation and construction companies are not that valuable. All right. Private equity really hasn't understood that. But the reason I'm willing to say that out loud is because I don't care about the valuation of freedom. I don't care. I'm not trying to sell this. I have no exit strategy. I've talked about this in the past. What we're just trying to do is run an incredible lean business, make 5, 6, 7, 8% margin, stay cash flow positive. That has been our mission from the beginning. That is what has fueled our growth over the last 10 years. And that's what it's going to continue getting us to 50% market share in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that first company that you referred to, we put out a press release on them. It was Meraki. So shout out to them because they did this and they've been crushing it on sales ever since. And they've been able to still take care of their customers. So that's been a tremendous success. I wanted to speak to that because I know there's a lot of other installers out there that are facing the same turbulence that you referenced. And to your point, it seems like it is probably only going to get more turbulent in a lot of ways. And even if it doesn't get worse for them, it certainly feels like it's going to get much better for freedom. And I'm referring to domestic content. And I think people have heard this term a lot in solar, but I really don't think the understanding that I have of domestic content is because I get to talk to you so much. But what the heck is domestic content and where did it come from?
All right, let me start by saying, and if you're listening and you're driving in a car and you're a sales rep, all right, I want you to just pound a Red Bull and I want you to get through the next few minutes because I'm going to give you a little bit of a history lesson. But the gold rush in residential solar is not ending. I want to be clear, all right? I get around so many people that say, I've got to make as much money as I possibly can because it's about to end. That is such an ignorant statement. That is not correct. A lot of people that are around me, they've heard me say this before, this is the greatest wealth creation opportunity of our lifetime. And I want to be clear. The United States of America is the greatest country in the world. We are an economic superpower because of the Industrial Revolution that happened in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. But over the last 50 years, we are losing, like we are not the same economic superpower that we once were. China is taking over and they're dominating because so much of the manufacturing and the production comes from Southeast Asia. And we need to take that back, all right? And when you really look at the last 100 years since the Industrial Revolution, oil has controlled the world economy. That is going to change. The next 150 years, it will be controlled by renewable energy. And when people say, oh, the industry's mature or I got in too late to residential solar, like that is so ignorant. Still today, with the energy production, 82% of our energy in the world comes from fossil fuels. All right. Another 9% comes from nuclear energy and only 9% come from renewable energy. Now, of that, less than 2% comes from solar and storage. And we have a pathway where our world's energy can be 100% renewable. It can be 50% solar and storage, and the other 50% is going to come from like wind, biomass, and hydropower. It can absolutely happen. That is what needs to happen. And whoever can control the manufacturing and can control renewable energy will be the world economic superpower for the next couple of 100 years. That needs to be the United States of America. And whether you're a Democrat or you're a Republican, that all comes down to the most significant piece of legislation literally in the last 100 years was the Inflation Reduction Act. All right. Everybody focuses on the fact and everybody's excited because the ITC tax credit on residential solar and storage is 30%. It was extended for 10 years. Yep. But when you really read the 450-page document, there's little nuggets of information in there. There's nuggets of like diamond nuggets. And those are the additional tax credits that you can get. So I'm going to outline those. Number one, low income. You can get up to 10% on top of the 30% if you install in a low income area. Now, that's a very small percentage of the US. So that's great, but only about 8% of the US homes qualify for that.
Okay.
And you don't know which ones do. The easier one is energy communities. There is a map. If you go on to the Department of Energy's information site, you can see the energy communities. That is a much larger map of the United States, and it continues to evolve and it continues to change. But approximately 35% of the country is in energy communities. Now you can get another 10% on top of that. So if you're building a residential solar plus storage system in a place that has low income, also in an energy communities, you can get up to 50% with those.
50% of the solar system gets paid for through those tax credits.
Yes, but the catch is an individual can only get up to 30%. The TPO companies are the only ones that are eligible to get these additional tax credits.
Okay.
So if you're wondering why 2 years ago, prior to the IRA, we were 80% loan in purchase, and today it's flipped.
Yep.
It's the inverse. It's now 80% TPO. It's because of these additional adders, right? There's also things like where there's a tax credit, whether you use a microinverter, Enphase, or you use SolarEdge. There's also a production tax credit, which is incentivizing people to build manufacturing plants. And this is what gets me so excited about the legislation. Why do you think Q-Cell is building a wafer, a cell, a polysilicon, a module plant in Georgia? They're pouring billions of dollars into manufacturing. And this is critical for us in the United States to become the world economic superpower and continue to stay there and surpass China. So that is happening right now. SolarEdge has built a plant. Enphase has built a plant. Silfab has built a plant. This has been amazing. This is going to be a boon to manufacturing, and we are going to take back control of the new oil, which is renewable energy. So it's not just about the tax credits, about creating the whole supply chain here in the US. And that is happening right now and has been happening for the last couple of years. Now, the most exciting additional tax credit after low income, after energy communities is domestic content. And why this is so important is you can get an additional 10% on every single residential solar and storage installation going forward if you have to have domestic content. We have been waiting for 2 years to come out with the guidelines to see how to get that. So if there's one criticism that I have of the Treasury Department and the IRA is that it took 2 years to get here.
Yep.
But like 3 months ago, the guidelines came out and they're subject to change over the 10 years. And I think they will continue to change. But it gave us a pathway to have inverters and rail qualify for domestic content and get this other 10% tax credit. So for the last 90 days, we are figuring out how to do that.
Yeah.
And starting on October 1, on all of our TPO products, we will be installing domestic content on every single TPO installation going forward from here on out. That is so exciting. Now, what happens to that tax credit? All right.
It goes to the TPO company, right? The finance company.
Correct. But there's 3 entities right now. If you're at a residential installer that's not named Sunrun or Freedom, we buy all of our equipment direct. So we're going to pay a lot less. Distribution is also buying domestic content. They have all kinds of chain of custody issues because you have to make sure what was manufactured ends up on the customer's roof. And the tax equity partners and the finance companies have to be sure that they're going to be able to get the tax credit. So it's much easier to do it with a company that buys direct from the manufacturer. So we're able to do it right now. Most companies are not going to be able to do domestic content at scale until Q1 and Q3, and they're going to have to go through distribution. Now, right now, the current cost of domestic content equipment is going up for every residential installer in the country by about 30 cents a watt. That is what the cost is when you go through distribution. You have to buy additional domestic content. Well, that doesn't sound great for the consumer, right? Because essentially what is coming is that every residential installer is going to have to increase their red lines or their baselines by 30 cents. Every finance company will mandate this, and this is happening. And if it hasn't happened to you, if you're in sales, it will happen most likely in Q4. Sunnova is the first company to mandate domestic content, but I want to be clear, every finance company will do it. It's so much money. They have to do that. And then it comes down to who gets it. And right now, the finance company gets it. Now, what do the finance companies need to get domestic content?
They need the installers to install equipment that qualifies for domestic content.
And you have to get the equipment.
Right.
And so the equipment costs, so guess who wants a piece of the action? The OEMs or the manufacturers.
Yep.
So the people that can get you to domestic content are the companies that have rail, all right? And also the inverters. So they're going to take a piece of the margin. And right now, as of October 1, it's us and Sunrun that are doing domestic content. No one else is at scale. We are going to use that to offset our costs, and we will not have an increase on our baselines. We will not have an increase. We don't have red lines, but we will not have an increase on baselines. In fact, we're going to see reductions at Freedom. So this is what I was talking about. I never dreamed a scenario. I already knew through economies of scale, we would always have a 30 to 40 cent a watt advantage because we're so large. But to think that we make an additional 40 cents on domestic content, that give us an advantage, that's crazy. It's mind-boggling to me. And I have a good friend that told me that he's getting into residential solar and he's going to start an EPC. And I just said, I cannot stress to you how big of a mistake that is, because you cannot compete with us. And at the end of the day, we can sell to the consumer 70 to 80 cents lower than anyone else. So you either, if you're an installer out there and you're listening to this, you either need to figure out a way to get your cost down by the 70 to 80 cents, or you need to get the out of this business. Right? That's the harsh reality is. And I'm sick of apologizing it. And like what we are doing is incredible. We are bringing the cost down to the consumer. California is a state where we consistently, as an industry, overcharge the customers. And we rationalize it. And I hear salespeople say, I'm still saving the customer money at 33 or 34 cents a kilowatt hour. We're selling on average at 23 cents. We can save people in our model that are on care at 15 cents. We can sell to the customer lower. And we want you, if you're in the Freedom ecosystem, to sell lower to the customer. And as we get furthered advantage, we're going to bring that cost down to the consumer. We are not going to try to make more margin for it. We don't want our sales reps to make more commissions. We want to bring that cost down to the consumer. I want the realization rate to go in because there's a direct correlation to how high you sell and your cancel rate. And our mission at Freedom is to accelerate the rate of residential solar adoption in the United States. We take that seriously. Every decision is made on, can we do that? And we are truly the company that's doing that. And I'm sick of apologizing. We're not putting people out of business. We're just taking inefficient companies and we're exposing them.
Yeah.
And either get efficient or jump on the train with Freedom.
Yeah.
All right. Like, I am sick and tired of the negativity around residential solar. When you say you're in the residential solar business and somebody at a party or at church scoffs, like, we deserve that. And we've got to bring the cost down. I'm sick and tired of us overcharging the customers. And the way you do it is through economies of scale, and you have to make intelligent, strategic decisions. And a lot of times you guys sit around and you guys, I can see the future. I can't see the future. This is obvious. All right. Like, if you haven't heard about domestic content, you have to be planning wherever you are. My costs are going up to 30 cents. And you have to make the conscious decision that you're going to have to charge 30 cents more a watt to the customer, or you're going to have to make a less commission on that project, or you can come and be part of the revolution here at Freedom. And that's the harsh reality of it. Or like have your installer do some creative things. Like we were not the largest installer when we started this 10 years ago. We had the same vision. Solar City was 38% of the market. We were 1,000th of 1/10 of 1%. Like we were doing 6 installs a month. Anybody can do this. All right. You just have to get out there and you have to have a mission oriented and do that. But if you don't, go do something else. Construction is hard. Go construct something else, but don't do it in the residential solar space and tarnish the brand and tarnish the image of our industry. I'm tired of it.
I'm going to try and recap that because there's so much that you just covered. And I hope they had a big Red Bull because that was that back in early summer, legislation and guidance came out on the domestic content, on all of the adders for the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Adders in the sense that they're additional tax credits that you can get on top of the 30%. One of them being low to medium income. We can't really control that. That's just where people live. It is what it is. There's a map. Another one being energy communities. We can't really control that. It is what it is. It's a map that people can look at, and that's where they can get access to those additional tax credits. But the one that at least Freedom can control is where are we buying our equipment? And you mentioned like rail and inverters. And so can you speak a little bit about the guidance that came out? It seems like it doesn't have to be the entire project. It doesn't have to be every single piece of equipment. You can get domestic content by piecing together different pieces of the system. How do you get to domestic content?
Yeah, so it has to be 40% of the overall equipment that it's put on a roof. All right. And there's specific calculations. And it's strange. Some of it doesn't make sense. But right now you can get there where approximately 35% comes from an inverter made in the US. The other 8% comes from rail. Now, the irony is we are coming out and we're using Q-cell and SILFAP panels that are made in the United States, but you get zero credit because the cells and the wafers are not made in the US yet. Okay. So that's why you get no credit for the modules, even though they are made in the US and are assembled here in the US.
So the goal with the Inflation Reduction Act and with domestic content is, like you said at the beginning, to kind of bring manufacturing back to the United States, to incentivize the manufacturing of solar parts here in the US, which is why these companies are investing so heavily into these manufacturing plants. Q-Cells has to do the wafers. They have to do from the beginning. They have to make the panels here in the United States. But if they do that, or if we can piece together rails and inverters, then you can get access to that domestic content adder. So you mentioned that other companies are not going to be able to have this, or Freedom has this huge advantage. Can you touch on that a little bit more? Does this mean that nobody will ever have this, or is this for a finite period of time while we work to transition all of the inventory over to domestic content?
Yes. So there will be more domestic. Right now, there is limited supply.
Okay.
So there will be an ample amount of supply in probably Q1 and Q2. So we'll have the supply advantage for all of Q4, maybe part of Q1. And we are really good, like, partners with the finance partner. Like, we know right now we're the only ones doing that. We want to have good partnerships. Like, the finance companies need to make more money.
Yeah.
They have lost money for 2022 and 2023. So I want to make sure that everybody understands they are not greedy. Like, what Sunnova is trying to do by mandating domestic content, they're trying to make back the losses of 22 and 23. And we want all the finance companies to do that because of the unique aspect, because of our size, because we're so dominant in the industry. Like, we're able to do that, but not everybody is going to do that. And the costs of the equipment are going to continue to be higher into Q1 and Q2 and Q3. Past that, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen to Q4, and these rules will change.
Yeah.
So I do believe domestic content will go through modules going forward. And what the Inflation Reduction Act will keep increasing that percentage. So, which is what is amazing about how well it's written, is that more and more manufacturing of renewable energy will come to the US. And for the people that think like the industry is mature, like I'm going to keep just giving you facts of why you're so ignorant when you say that. All right. Like we will get to 50% of all of our energy consumption will be fueled, all right, by solar and storage. We're at less than 2% today. In addition to that, I believe the consumption will double in a home because of the electrification of the house. Electric cars, all those types of things are boosting consumption. So we're going to see consumption, in my opinion, double in the next 20 years. Like we are in the embryonic stage of residential solar and storage. A lot of people are concerned about like net metering ending and utilities being against us. I want to be clear, utilities are against us.
Yeah.
All right. But the reality is that there has to be a balance of the grid. And so even when you see a draconian law get passed, like we have in net metering is ending in Arkansas, the economics over the short term are going to be very, very difficult. But like the new successor program, net metering is ending in Illinois. And Illinois, the state of Illinois is so intelligent because they want to have a balanced grid.
Yeah.
And so one of the flaws in solar is just PV only doesn't work at night.
Yep.
All right. So when you have net metering, it makes all the sense of the world to not have storage. But then what happens in a particular state is there becomes a grid imbalance. This happened in Hawaii. It's happening in California right now.
Right.
And so then what you have to do to even it out is if you have to pay more for the energy at night. And when you have an overabundance of solar PV only coming out of the grid of the day, it devalues the value of energy on a unit by unit basis. But way you balance that is you need more at night.
Yeah.
And so you need to get ahead of it. And so when you get to 3 or 4% residential solar penetration in the state, you're going to see the states like Illinois, which is at that, they start balancing the grid by creating incentives for storage. And so today, net metering is ending on the end of December. But when you look at the successor program, it's actually more attractive in the state of Illinois to go solar with storage, with the additional cost of storage because of the battery incentives that they've created. And so this is going to be the future of our industry. And the people that do it wrong will get punished, and then they're going to have to come back and they're going to have to overcompensate for storage incentives later on. Yeah. But overall across the country, like we are at the beginning. We are at the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah.
All right. That's where we are. You know, if you used like you looked at the Bible, we would be on the second day of creation. That's where this industry is. We are embryonic. And like, please stop spouting those like ignorant thoughts because that creates a level of selfishness. Like, instead of you thinking, I've got to make as much money as I can in a short period of time, and you start looking at it the right way and you stretch your boundaries of thought, you go, wow, every single customer that I'm selling today is a recurring customer that's going to come back to me. Because even if he's getting storage today, he's going to need to double the size of his system as he gets electric cars, as they electrify their home. If you start looking at every single customer that you're selling, you're going to go back and make another commission. You're going to act in a more selfless manner, and you're going to put that customer first. And that's what we need. All right. In every other industry, I don't come from door to door. All right. And if you sell solar, all right, and you do it door to door, there are so many people that look at themselves as door to door salespeople. Stop doing that. I need you guys to look at like, how do I become a residential solar professional? How do I understand storage? Like, there is no greater opportunity in door to door, all right, than residential solar. Like, you don't want to say like, hey, I'm going to take advantage of this opportunity and then I'm going to go into pest, or there's going to be this other opportunity. There's nothing like residential solar. All right. Where can you actually sell a product where you're saving the customer money if you do it right and you sell it the right way and you make an impact on climate change? Like at the end of the day, I'm around a lot of people that are really a lot younger than me. And they're going to get to a point in their life is that you start looking back and you're like, did my life make a difference? I'm 55 years old and I want the rest of my life to make a difference. And that's what we are doing. And you have this incredible opportunity. I wish I had this opportunity at 25. I feel before I got into solar, I squandered my life. I squandered my business career. Even though I did well and had some successes, I don't have the sense of fulfillment that I wake up every day with. And yes, is this difficult? Is the last 2 years been harder than the first 7 years? The answer is yes to all of that.
Right.
But the level of fulfillment that I get on a daily basis is like nothing I've ever had. And you have the opportunity to have that at 25. And there's people that are going to be listening to this that don't really even grasp or understand that. All right. And, I know a nice car and a nice house and a nice boat is really, really important to you guys, but it's just not that important. As you get older, you're going to realize the most important things are your family. All right. And did your life make a difference? Were you a good husband? Were you a good father? All right. Were you a good businessman? Did you spend the hours in your day that God blessed you with? And did you spend it or did you squander that on things that aren't important? And it's so cool to get to do what we do. It's amazing, but we have to fix it. We have to stop being selfish. We have to have a long-term mentality. And you have to look at this as a career. All right? Stop the door-to-door mentality, because I will tell you, residential solar is not going to go online. It is not going to be sold over a computer. It's going to get more complex. The rate plans are going to get more complex. With storage coming onto the grid, it's going to be harder. We need you sitting at the kitchen table with the homeowner. Door-to-door was made, and I've never had any business that have used door-to-door. I had a negative perception prior to 2015 about it. It is the future in our industry, but we have to clean ourselves up. And the negativity that you brought from door to door, leave it in door to door. It doesn't have a space here. Do it the right way. Don't cut corners. Don't sell high. Do it the right way. Put the customer first. And if you can do that, our lives will all make a difference. And I can only do so much as the CEO of Freedom. I need everyone. Our job is we need to build an absolute army of salespeople, of door-to-door people. And we need to have everyone under the Freedom umbrella to really, truly accelerate the rate of residential solar adoption in the US. It's all about the mission. And this is a call to arms for everybody. We need you to join us now. All right? Quit doing it the wrong way. Do it the right way and have your life make a difference.
Wow. I think you hit the nail on the head, and it is really, really cool to see the transition from a lot of these other companies that I think have been trying to go their own path and then eventually just say, you know what? Let's get back to what we're good at, what we like doing, what we enjoy. Let's get back into focusing on selling solar and let Freedom take care of the rest. And you've really built the model and the program to do that. I know the last 2 years have been incredibly stressful for the entire industry. I've seen you work harder than I've ever seen you before, which I didn't think was even possible. But yes, your demeanor, your sense of fulfillment, you haven't changed as a person. You're just doing more of exactly what you've been doing, which is just grinding this out and building this thing. So it's been amazing to see. And there's no question in my mind that Freedom is poised to continue to dominate and grow. And totally agree with you. We just need more of the sales talent to join sooner rather than later. it's sad. You hear, oh, this guy, he left the solar industry, he's going to do roofing. Or that guy, oh, he's going to go do pest control. Oh, this guy's going to go back and become a chef like he used to before he got into solar. It's like the industry is chewing people up and spitting them out. But that's not happening here, and that hasn't happened here. We're continuing to grow, continuing to dominate, and the sooner people can realize that and just come and join the revolution, I think the sooner we can achieve that mission of accelerating the rate of residential solar adoption. So thank you, Brett. Thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom. This is Season 6, Episode 1. We are going to be releasing a new episode every single Friday. So make sure you like, you subscribe, and more important than anything, share this with your friends, with your colleagues, with everyone. Make sure you post this. We need to get the word out about what Freedom is doing, and these next guests we have throughout this season, you are not going to want to miss it. Thank you for listening, and thank you so much, Brett, for all that you do and for joining today.
Appreciate you having me. Thank you.